Adapted from archaic translation by H.T. Francis and Ra. Neil. Jataka No. 359. Suvaṇṇamiga Jataka. O Golden Foot. This was a story told by the master while in residence at Jetavana Monastery, about a girl of gentle birth in Shravasti city. She was, they say, the daughter in the household of a assistant of the two chief disciples at Shravasti city, and was a faithful believer, fondly attached to Buddha, the righteous path, and the congregation of monks, exceeding in good works, wise unto salvation, and devoted to almsgiving and such like deeds of piety. Another family in Shravasti city of equal rank but of wrong views chose her in marriage. Then her parents said, "Our daughter is a faithful believer, devoted to the three treasures, given to alms and other good works. But you hold wrong views. And as you will not allow her to give alms, or to hear the truth, or to visit the monastery, or to keep the moral law, or to observe holidays, as she pleases, we will not give her to you in marriage. Choose you a girl from a family of wrong views like yourselves." When their offer was rejected, they said, "Let your daughter when she comes to our house do everything of this kind, as she pleases. We will not prevent her. Only grant us this boon." "Take her then," they answered. So they celebrated the marriage festivity at an auspicious season and led her home. She proved faithful in the fulfillment of her duties, and a devoted wife, and rendered due service to her father-in-law and mother-in-law. One day she said to her husband, "I wish, my lord, to give alms to our family monks." "Very well, my dear. Give them just what you please." So one day she invited these monks, and making a great entertainment, she fed them with choice food, and taking a seat apart from them she said, "Holy sirs, this family is wrong and unbelieving. They are ignorant of the value of the three treasures. Well then, sirs, until this family understands the value of the three treasures, do you continue to receive your food here?" The monks agreed and continually ate their meals there. Again she addressed her husband, "Sir, the monks constantly come here. Why do you not see them?" On hearing this he said, "Very well, I will see them." On the next day she told him when the monks had finished their meal. He came and sat respectfully on one side, conversing courteously with the monks. Then the captain of the faith preached the righteous path to him. He was so charmed with the exposition of the faith and the manner of the monks, that from that day forward he prepared mats for the elders to sit on, and strained water for them, and during the meal listened to the exposition of the faith. In due course of time his wrong views gave way. So one day the elder monk in explaining the faith explained the truths to the man and his wife, and when the sermon was ended, they were both established in the fruition of the first path. From then on all of them, from his parents down to the hired servants, gave up their wrong views, and became devoted to the Buddha, his righteous path, and the holy order of monks. So one day this young girl said to her husband, "What, sir, have I to do with the household life? I wish to adopt the religious life." "Very well, my dear," he said, "I too will become an ascetic." And he conducted her with great pomp to a sisterhood, and had her admitted as a novice, and himself too went to the master and begged to be initiated. The master admitted him first to initiate monks and afterwards to elder monks' holy order. They both received clear spiritual vision, and shortly attained to sainthood. One day they raised a discussion in the Hall of Truth, saying, "Sirs, a certain woman by reason of her own faith and that of her husband became a novice. And both of them having adopted the religious life, and gained clear spiritual vision, attained to sainthood." The master, when he came, inquired what was the topic the brethren were sitting in council to discuss, and on hearing what it was, he said, Brethren, not now only did she set her husband free from the bonds of passion. Formerly too she freed even sages of old from the bonds of death. And with these words he held his peace, but being pressed by them he told a story of the past. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the bodhisattva came to life as a young stag, and grew up a beautiful and graceful creature, of the color of gold. His fore and hind feet were covered, as it were, with a preparation of lac. His horns were like a silver wreath, his eyes resembled round jewels, and his mouth was like a ball of crimson wool. The doe that was his mate was also a handsome creature, and they lived happily and harmoniously together. 80,000 of spotted deer followed in the group of the bodhisattva. While they were thus living there, a certain hunter set a snare in the deer drives. So one day the bodhisattva, while leading his herd, entangled his foot in the snare, and thinking to break the noose he tugged at it and cut the skin of his foot. Again he tugged it, and hurt the flesh, and a third time and injured the tendon. And the noose penetrated to the very bone. Not being able to break the snare, the stag was so alarmed with the fear of death that he uttered a succession of cries. On hearing it the herd of deer fled in a panic. But the doe, as she fled, looking amongst the deer, missed the bodhisattva, and thought, "This panic must certainly have something to do with my lord," and flying in haste to him, with many tears and cryings she said, "My lord, you are very strong. Why can you not get the better of the snare? Put on your strength and break it." And thus stirring him up to make an effort, she uttered the first stanza. O golden foot, no effort spare, to loose yourself from thonged snare. How could I joy, without of you, to move amidst the woodland free? The bodhisattva, on hearing this, responded in a second stanza. I spare no effort, but in vain. My liberty I cannot gain. The more I struggle to get loose, the sharper bites the thonged noose. Then the doe said, "My lord, fear not. By my own power will I plead the hunter, and by giving up my own life I will gain yours in exchange." And thus comforting the great being, she continued to embrace the blood-stained bodhisattva. But the hunter approached, with sword and spear in hand, like to the destroying flame at the beginning of a cycle. On seeing him, the doe said, "My lord, the hunter is coming. By my own power I will rescue you. Be not afraid." And thus comforting the stag, she went to meet the hunter. And standing at a respectful distance, she saluted him and said, "My lord, my husband is of the color of gold, and gifted with all the virtues, the king of 80,000 of deer." And thus singing the praises of the bodhisattva, she begged for her own death, if only the king of the herd might remain intact, and she repeated the third stanza. Let on the earth a leafy bed, hunter, where we may fall, be spread. And withdrawing from its sheath your sword, kill me and afterwards my lord. The hunter, on hearing this, was struck with amazement and said, "Even human beings give not up their lives for their king. Much less the beasts. What can this mean? This creature speaks with a sweet voice in the language of men. This day will I grant life to her and to her mate." And greatly charmed with her, the hunter uttered the fourth stanza. A beast that speaks with voice of men never came before within my understanding. Rest you in peace, my gentle dear, and cease, O golden foot, to fear. The doe, seeing the bodhisattva set at his ease, was highly delighted, and returning thanks to the hunter, repeated the fifth stanza. As I today rejoice to see this mighty beast at liberty, so, hunter, that did loose the snare, rejoice with all your friends and family. And the bodhisattva thought, this hunter has granted life to me and this doe, and to 80,000 of deer. He has been my refuge, and I should be a refuge to him. And in his character of one supremely virtuous, he thought, one should make a proper return to one who helped, and he gave the hunter a magic jewel which he had found in their feeding ground and said, "Friend, from now on take not the life of any creature, but with this jewel set up a household and maintain a wife and children, and give alms and do other good works." And thus addressing him, the stag disappeared in the forest. The master here ended his lesson and identified the birth. At that time Channa was the hunter, this female novice was the doe, and I myself was the royal stag. Source: adapted from archaic translation by H.T. Francis and Ra. Neil. Jataka number 360. Sasondi Jataka. I sent the fragrance, etc. This story the master, while living at Jetavana monastery, told concerning a backsliding brother. The master asked if it were true that he longed for the world, and what he had seen to make him regret having taken to holy order of disciples. The brother answered, it was all owing to the charms of a woman. The master said, truly, brother, there is no possibility of being on one's guard against womenfolk. Sages of old, though they took the precaution to dwell in the dwelling of the garudas, failed to be on their guard against them. And being urged by him, the master told a story of the past. Once upon a time King Tamba reigned in Benares, and his queen wife named Sasondi was a woman of surpassing beauty. At that time the bodhisattva came to life as a young garuda. Now the Naga island was then known as Sirama Island, and the bodhisattva lived on this island in the dwelling of the garudas. And he went to Benares, disguised as a youth, and played at dice with King Tamba. Remarking his beauty they said to Sasondi, such and such a youth plays at dice with our king. She longed to see him, and one day she adorned herself and went to the dice chamber. There taking her stand amongst the attendants, she fixed her gaze on the youth. He too gazed on the queen, and the pair fell in love with one another. The Garuda king by an act of supernatural power stirred up a storm in the city. The people, through fear of the house falling, fled out of the palace. By his power he caused it to be dark, and carrying off the queen with him in the air, he made his way to his own dwelling in Naga Island. But no one knew of the coming or going of Sasondi. The Garuda took his pleasure with her, and still came to play at dice with the king. Now the king had a musician named Sagga. And not knowing where the queen had gone, the king addressed the musician and said, "Go now and explore every land and sea, and discover what has become of the queen." And so saying he asked him to be gone. He took what was necessary for his journey, and beginning the search from the city gate, at last came to bharukaccha. At that time certain merchants of bharukaccha were setting sail for the Golden Land. He approached them and said, "I am a musician. If you remit my passage money, I will act as your musician. Take me with you." They agreed to do so, and putting him on board weighed anchor. When the ship was fairly off, they called him and asked him to make music for them. He said, "I would make music, but if I do, the fish will be so excited that your vessel will be wrecked." "If a mere mortal," they said, "make music, there will be no excitement on the part of the fish. Play to us. Then do not be angry with me," he said, and tuning his lute and keeping perfect harmony between the words of his song and the accompaniment of the lute string, he made music for them. The fish were maddened at the sound and splashed about. And a certain sea monster leaping up fell upon the ship and broke it in two. Sagga lying on a plank was carried along by the wind till he reached a banyan tree in the Naga island, where the Garuda king lived. Now Queen Sasondi, whenever the Garuda king went to play at dice, came down from her place of dwelling, and as she was wandering on the edge of the shore, she saw and recognized the musician Sagga, and asked him how he got there. He told her the whole story. And she comforted him and said, "Do not be afraid," and embracing him in her arms, she carried him to her dwelling and laid him on a couch. And when he was greatly revived, she fed him with heavenly food, bathed him in heavenly scented water, dressed him in heavenly dress, and adorned him with flowers of heavenly perfume, and made him recline upon a heavenly couch. Thus did she watch over him, and whenever the Garuda king returned, she hid her lover, and so soon as the king was gone, under the influence of passion she took her pleasure with him. At the end of a month and a half from that time some merchants, who lived at Benares, landed at the foot of the banyan tree in this island, to get firewood and water. The musician went on board ship with them, and on reaching Benares, as soon as he saw the king, while he was playing at dice, Sagga took his lute, and making music recited the first stanza. I scent the fragrance of the Timira grove. I hear the moaning of the weary sea. Tamba, I am suffering with my love. For fair Suvaṇṇamiga dwells afar from me. On hearing this the Garuda king uttered the second stanza. How did you cross the stormy waters? And Sirama in safety gain? How did you Sagga, tell me, I request, to fair Suvaṇṇamiga win your way? Then Sagga repeated 3 stanzas. With trading folk from Bharukaccha land, my ship was wrecked by monsters of the sea. I on a plank did safely gain the strand, when an anointed queen with gentle hand had me tenderly upon her knee, as though to her a true son I might be. She food and dresses brought, and as I lay, with love-lorn eyes hung over my couch all day. No, Tamba, well, this word is truth I say. The Garuda, while the musician thus spoke, was filled with regrets and said, though I lived in the dwelling of the Garudas, I failed to guard her safely. What is this wicked woman to me? So he brought her back and presented her to the king and departed. And from then on he came not there any more. The master, his lesson ended, explained the truths and identified the birth. At the conclusion of the truths the worldly-minded brother attained fruition of the first path. At that time Ananda was the king of Benares, and I myself was the Garuda king.